and they'll catch up as they should. Anyway, this is Cyversity Engage. This is Cyversity Impact Engage. We meet every fourth Saturday of the month. Today we're interviewing a very close friend and colleague and business alliance that I have known for quite some time, John McGloughlin. I call him affectionately Johnny Mac, as many of his other colleagues do as well. But today, March 26th, we're going to be interviewing Johnny Mac. And let me just run through a couple of things that we should be running through. This is Cyversity Impact, Cyversity. And as you can see on the screen, our mission, as always, is to achieve the consistent representation of women and minorities and underrepresented minorities in cybersecurity industry. And we do that through programs that are designed to foster recruitment, inclusion, retention, equity, among other things. We are a membership organization, and in fact, just this January, we started our paid membership model. Students invest in themselves $20 a year, $20 a year in order to get access to some of the member benefits, and professionals, they invest $100 in themselves. It's a small investment for quite a bit of opportunities and career trajectory. Much of that you'll gain. So now that we're speaking about benefits, here are some of the benefits on screen that you can see that Cyversity offers to its membership. It's career exploration. You guys got to excuse me. I had a procedure on my mouth about 2 weeks ago, and now I've got a contraption in my mouth that makes me sort of fumble and sound a little bit like Elmer Fudd. So please just forgive that and bear with me through that. But career exploration, as I was mentioning, cybersecurity skills assessments, development of your a particular skill set through Engage events, scholarships, trainings, and mentorship programs. And of course, there's a huge networking opportunity that comes to you as one of your member benefits. And in June, I believe, no, it's November, and Bennett, you'll correct me. It's November, we're going to be having the Cyversity conference, which is typically held, historically it's been held in Atlanta, but this year we'll be in Florida, so keep an eye out for that. A couple of the topic areas that we work on or develop or speak about or focus on is career development, career spotlighting, transitioning, leadership, and tech talks. And I also like to, when I get to that part and talking about tech talks, I like to throw in a plug there for the chapters that Cyversity has. There are 7 of them, and I happen to be involved in part of the leadership for the Texas chapter, and our president of Cyversity Texas chapter is here today as well. So thank you, Bennett, for joining us. You can see that we've got quite a few highlights that we highlight throughout the year. We've already been through Black History Month. I never think it's enough for us, but I never think any of these focuses are in the time that they're highlighted is enough. But you can see that February was Black History Month. Of course, May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, Senior Citizens Month as well. June is LGBTQ Pride Month. September is Latino Heritage. And of course, you can see through October, November, December, there are other areas that are focused. Just some ground rules. Please mute your background noise. Rhonda already told us she's muting in the background. Thank you, Rhonda. Just mute in the background so we avoid some of the background noise.
You're welcome. I can hear you.
Thank you very much. This conversation is going to be about 60 minutes. Sometimes we run over because the speakers usually have some really solid advice for mentees and folks that are early in their journey. And then there's a lot of questions, but 60 minutes, and then it's going to be a question and answer period. I, as well, you guys know, I got a lot of questions. I always have a lot of questions, but there's be an opportunity to voice your questions, put them in the chat box or come off mute and speak. And the session is being recorded, so you know that we're going to have this will be recorded so that you can download it from Cyversity's on-demand page on the website, and so that you can utilize that to connect with this particular recording. Now, to get to the main event, if you will, I just wanted to talk a few minutes about a good friend of mine who is on the line with us today, John McGloughlin. He's the founder and CEO of GuardSight. Many of you may not know GuardSight because he's up in Utah, but his organization is the cybersecurity as a service provider. And John always likes to say, we get our hands dirty. But what he has done is created a work environment where the folks love to and live to fight have the cyber warfare that they're good at, and they love it, they live it, and that's the work that they do. He's a service provider for some very what should I say, some very high net worth organizations, some Fortune companies. John is graced us today and come to us today to work with us, and so I'm happy to see that, and I'm happy to have him here today. I'm going to get off that and get back to the screen. As you can see, John is still working.
Always.
It's still working, and so John, thanks for coming. Right, I'll let you guys know early on. John is a no nonsense guy. It's not going to be one of those conversations where we're giving you these conversations, non-substantive platitudes or symbolic gestures around cybersecurity. John is a very straightforward, direct talking person when it comes to cybersecurity and the need and the requirement, and of course the skills that you need to do and acumen that you need to have in order to be in cybersecurity. So you're not going to hear anything here that's fuzzy. This is real talk. John, I've known you for quite some time. We've become buds. You even came to Austin to sit down and have a couple beers with me on your way to boar shooting. Next time you come through the boar shooting, I am going. I understand it's a nighttime thing. I'm looking forward to being out at night with goggles and viewfinders to shoot some boars. I've never shot, believe it or not. I'm from Brooklyn. I've never shot a gun. So, oh no, that's not true. I shot one in Detroit. Mr. had us in his backyard shooting them off into the breeze or what have you. But
nice.
John, I know you very well, and some of the folks here may know you, but please just spend a couple of minutes just talking to us about Johnny Mac, who we know affectionately as that. Let's talk to us about you, your journey, who you are, where you're from, and yeah, let's get into that. Thanks.
All right. Well, yeah. Hey, thanks, man. How much I respect you, and for the people that are on the call, every time David and I speak, it always starts with laughter. So that is true. That is no joke. For some reason, we just start laughing. We had an immediate kinship when we met each other, and so I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to talk to your teams, and some of my teammates are also on the call. So I started my career back in the late '80s when networking was just in its infancy stages. And so I'm old, I guess. I've been around since dinosaurs have roamed the earth. And I got into e-com and web in the mid '90s. And we kind of talk about some of this, I think, in terms of just how I get dragged into cyber. I started in cyber in the 2000s-ish, right at the turn of the century there. And then I started this company in 2009, and talk a little bit about why I started this company and where we're at, and what a great opportunity I still have today to lead the company and my employees that are here, my teammates. And so my background is in, computer networking, computer security, cybersecurity, leadership. And that's pretty much it. I'm a jiu-jitsu fan. I'm a firearms fan. I'm a athlete, and still an athlete, that kind of stuff.
No doubt.
But what I really do, my passion is leading my company.
No doubt. Very good. John, it's you just mentioned something, and you'll excuse me, I'm looking over here to my left, your right. I'm looking at my notes here because I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about you in Utah, right? That's where you're located. And then also this here passion that you have for jiu-jitsu, because we're going to go through some personal questions, some industry questions, and of course some social impact questions, which of course is part of our whole approach and process here. And so you're in Utah. Are you originally from Utah? Is that your home?
No, sir. I'm a Boston guy.
Okay.
So I was born in the city. My parents moved us up to Cowell, Hampshire, New Hampshire, when we were kids. And so my formative years were, I grew up in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And in my early 20s, I moved out to California, and I started my career in the Silicon Valley out there, and lived in California for almost 30 years, I guess, maybe almost just about 30 years. And then finally, my wife and I had owned a home in southern Utah as early as 2013. And I moved the business up in 2018. And so now I live in, that's where the business is. The business is in Cedar City. So for those of you that aren't familiar or are familiar with southern Utah, we're in the Zion region. So we're sandwiched between Las Vegas and Salt Lake City, essentially.
Okay. Great. You got this love for jujitsu. What's up with that? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, man, I was pretty fortunate about that. I've been doing it for a little bit over a year now. A colleague of mine said, have you ever done any jujitsu? And I said, no, I didn't really even know what it was. And he said, you got to do it. You'll love it. And it's your personality and what you like to do. And so I tried it, and I have no regrets in life. But if I had to say I had one regret, it would be that I did start jiu-jitsu 20 years ago. But then again, I might be all broken up from doing it, And I was addicted to it the first time I went, mostly because I got my butt kicked, and still because I keep getting my butt kicked. But I'm kicking butt now, so that's probably what the turn is.
There you go.
There's a lot of for those of you that do it or have tried it, I'm in my mid 50s now, and I get to fight, teenagers and 20-year-olds. So that'll keep you in shape. But more importantly than that, I think is what I've learned from it is the acceptance of a journey. It's made me, it's a mind, body, spirit type thing. It's probably made me a better listener because you have to kind of listen to what's happening. It's definitely is, parallels. It subscribes to my discipline, my approach to life, and just discipline in generally, and being determined, especially when somebody's trying to choke you out or break your arm and that kind of stuff. Just being determined to continue to fight and get out of it. It's taught me to breathe better. All those types of things, man, are just, things that you can apply both personally and professionally. For those of you that do jiu-jitsu, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those that don't, as we discussed in Texas, David, when last time I saw you, it was like, hey, man, you got to do this.
Yeah,
you'll dig it. It's good, and the way that I did it was I just put it on my calendar, and now I, get up about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, about 3 or 4 times a week. I usually go fight on Friday nights, but the other nights in the morning, I get up and drive about 45 miles north of my house and fight. Yeah, every single morning. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you not only get up and fight for jiu-jitsu, but you get up every morning and fight in this ongoing battle, this digital battle that we're engaged in. And so I wanted to ask a question about, this thing about jiu-jitsu inspiring you, but also you've got some inspiration that you've accomplished, or you've got some inspiration that you've accomplished through your work. There's a question that I've written here. Who has inspired you? Who's inspired you recently, even today? And, I wanted to add a bit of color to that before we jump into some industry questions. So I just wanted everybody to get a real broad perspective of who Johnny Mac is.
Yeah. So, the people that inspire me the most, and even today, who's inspired me are, my teammates. I know that, there's a lot of, people get inspired by, people that have celebrity status or they're, other people, maybe their moms, and my parents definitely inspired me, but today and most recently, it's my teammates. And I can give you a couple examples of those inspirations. So, recently I was on a call with our HR team. I have a call with my HR person every week. And they mentioned that somebody was asking about health insurance for part-time employees. And I normally don't get involved with any types of medical conditions or things like that with my employees, because it's private matter between my employees and HR. And this person was a full-time employee. I had asked about the catalyst of the question, and they had told me that this person was a full-time employee, but they were considering going part-time. And so they gave me their name, and I contacted them to say, hey, why are you doing this? And what was the reason for the question? And it turns out that this individual has a child who has got development issues, and they are, potentially thinking about having to go part-time to deal, with this child and with this issue. And but that's a real challenge for them because one, the bills got to keep being paid. So that's the first thing. The second is that health insurance is extremely important. And there's other things. But what inspired me about it was, the individual is a full-on warrior, never once complained about any of that. You wouldn't have known it. They just continue to just charge forward and be disciplined about what they do for a living. And more importantly, I think that the biggest concern they had was that they would let down their teammates. And so that's inspiration, like to the bone, man. And so that, of course, I'm going to change that. We'll make that program right for that person, but they would have never approached it to say, hey, so you could see the selflessness in that. The other story I might say is like one of the individuals on my team is, a retired. I have several, military members on my team. And some of them are combat veterans, and one of the guys on my team is a combat veteran. Spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, was 5 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. And on his last tour of duty in Afghanistan, he was severely injured, and it had a physical impact, cognitive impact. Never mind just the no crap experience of war, that type of thing. And this individual has fought back, and to give you an idea of that duration. So from the time that you enter the Marine Corps to the time that you actually have these injuries from war and you've recovered, that's, for him, that's about 15 years, which is roughly about 50% of my career. So for 15 years of his life, he's dealing with some pretty bad stuff and then recovering from it, working hard to get back to where you need to be a contributing member of society and to live an enlightened life. And I've been inspired by just watching this person become focused and become disciplined, become, overcoming these challenges, never complaining about these challenges, just embracing that suck and wanting to achieve. So the answer to the question is my teammates are what inspires me. And I could give you, a dozen more stories about probably stories they don't even know I know about them. And that makes me really proud of them. And it makes me, it inspires me, makes me want to be a better person.
Good. That leads me to a question about the folks that you have on your team. Obviously, people that come to your team are, they're a certain type and kind that need to be or desire to be in this particular industry sector. It's not an easy sector, contrary to what people think and hear and believe. They hear about the money, they hear about the glory, they hear about but they don't hear about the get your hands dirty type stuff. What kind of person comes to, what's a two-part question? What kind of person comes to GuardSight, and what do you think is a good characteristic to have to be in cybersecurity? Two-part question.
Yeah. So the type of people that come to GuardSight are all walks of life. I mean, I've been around for a long time, and I'm, the founder and CEO of my company. So I have courage. And I want to take risks on people because I was given an opportunity in my early 20s, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And most people, in at that age, don't know what they know. Still, David, you and I don't know what we don't know. And so I'm always interested in providing the grinders of the world the opportunity. I like the selfless persistence in people, the ability to say, I know what I want and I'm going to go get it. And I'm going to control my own destiny and not let others control my own destiny or tell me, what I am, what I can or can't be. And those are people I really, that's probably the first thing before I even look to see. And I don't even look at that stuff, quite frankly. Do you have a computer science degree? Have you finished your 4-year education? I mean, that stuff is so far on the totem pole for me. I don't interview all the people that come into the company anymore just because we've grown. My directors do that, but I've instilled that same thing in them. And so we have, everything from, undergraduates to graduates to PhDs to technical school graduates, to trade school, essentially, like what our, parents and grandparents did. They went to trade schools to people with no formal education whatsoever, to military, LEO, EMTs, firefighters, people that have just essentially changed careers, everybody that's, multi-socioeconomic backgrounds, multi-race, multi-gender, everything. I mean, cyber is definitely that. And, the things that I look for in people are, when they get to my team are, and this would be my leadership team. If you talk to any of my leaders, they would tell you the same thing. We're interested in that people are going to be, are going to grind it out and be good teammates. They're going to work towards the team. So for me, what I would say is if you came here and you didn't have any, somehow you're able to get in without certifications or something, usually we'll tell you, we want you to do that. But we have apprenticeships, and, we're recently working with the Department of Labor on their apprenticeship program. We have internships. But if you came to me or my team, we might tell you, we want you to go get something like that. But, what's more important is, like, tell us about your background. Tell us about, you, what makes up you, what makes you, want to get up in the morning and do things. And you have integrity? Are you an honest person? Or do you have discipline? Are you, focused on your objectives? Those are things that are way more important to me now than, have you been in the field for 10 years? That kind of stuff.
Of course, I'm talking on mute, right? You also tell me, John, that your team gets dirty. What do you mean by your team gets dirty? Give me an example.
Yeah, so there's multiple disciplines in cyber, right? So I think everybody on the call here is familiar with some of these. So everything from SecOps, operations, which is what we're in. I'll talk about that. To GRC, governance, risk, compliance. To architecture and engineering. To software, the software makers, the people that make the cyber weapons or cyber tools that we use to fight the bad guys. To identity access management. To blockchain security, crypto security, to asset management, vulnerability management. There's multiple domains in cyber, which is also something that people should realize. Like, when you're trying to break into cyber, there are all these domains. It's not just like I'm going to go be a database engineer, and I need to know several different database types. It's like for cyber, there's so many different domains, and some of them are have, say, less of an active cadence than others. And so SecOps is, a nefarious domain, or it's a replete with nefarious activity. It's always on. It's an operational domain. And bad guys don't call us to say, hey, we're going to be there at 1600 tomorrow. Will you guys be there too, so we can fight each other? It doesn't work that way. You never know when they're going to show up. They're always showing up. There's thousands of threat groups. So in order to have a mentality to be in that space, what we'll call the SecOps or, incident response space, which is, quick reaction force mentalities and just being on the wire all the time, is, you have to have a grunt mentality, and you've got to be a grinder, and, you got to want to make contact with the enemy on a daily basis. And you have to have a warrior spirit. That's for SecOps, SecOps and SpecOps for that matter. It doesn't necessarily mean that would be what you would need for GRC. And there are attributes for GRC that don't align or are opposite of SpecOps, for example. Dealing with the business more than you would in SpecOps. I mean, that's one great thing about SpecOps is most of the time, you're dealing with the enemy. Versus, if you get into large corporations, for those of you who've been in large corporations, sometimes dealing with the business can be a difficult challenge. Or what I would call, a challenging opportunity. But in SpecOps, you're a grinder, and you're a fighter, and that's just your mentality. And you'll run it. Most people I've been in it for 25 years, which is probably way too long. But it's what I like, and I'm not on the cyber ground anymore. But if I was, I would still like it, because that's my personality. That's what I like. I like where the action is. I like to go there and, find bad guys and kick their ass. And that's kind of what SecOps is about.
Sure. For an entry-level person, and we've got a few on the line, on the call, for an entry-level person that is trying to find their way into technology and cybersecurity, is it aptitude, attitude? And you already said that academics plays a role. It's not the primary role, but what do I know what you focus on. industry-wide, what's the focus? And where should a person sort of center themselves?
I think it depends on how you're entering. So I would say this, for large organizations, large corporations, enterprise level corporations, their mechanism for the acquisition of talent is much different than, say, companies of my size, our size, GuardSight size, or companies that are specialized. So GuardSight's a provider. We're a service provider. We're a collection of operators. This is our specific domain. This is what we do to make a living. If you were to go work at, Alcoa as a security engineer, that's a completely different way to make a living. And you're going to be tied to one set of weaponry, and you're going to be tied to those, just whatever happens at that particular company. And I don't bring them up because they're a customer or anything. I just pick the company out of the blue that would, resonate with people as a large organization. Pick any large organization. The challenge you're going to have in entering those organizations is a lot of that's a screen test in terms of what your academic resume looks like. And most of the time, the way that you would get in there is it's about who you know more than what you know. Versus a company like ours, it might be, and that would be more of, the aptitude deal. But a company like GuardSight, aptitude is important. You got to go through the process. You got to go through the screening process. Say, what do you know about cyber? We're interested in what you know more than we are interested in what you don't know. But attitude is probably the heavier one there, because you're dealing with smaller teams, smaller organizations, and you're servicing multiple, hundreds of customers. So it's not just that one customer where you're in that domain, the 1700 bus comes around, you're on it every night, there's a big difference there. And so when you're entering the field, my recommendation would be just set your sights on, a company that's most likely going to bring you in, which was possibly a smaller company. There are restrictions for that too, if I could hire everybody, I would. But we're a for-profit company, so ours is about revenue and profit and all those good things. But in the larger corporate, but when we do have those opportunities, we've taken advantage of that a lot. I would also recommend this to any entry-level person: just interview and screen as much as possible, because what that'll do is it'll teach you about it'll give you feedback. And it'll give you the opportunity to improve. So as you're trying to get in, what I'll see a lot in the space is, people try to get in and they can't get in. And so what do? They stop. No, that's the absolute wrong thing to do. If it's really what you want to do, if that's your passion and you really want to do it, just keep trying. Just keep trying. And guess what? You're going to get knocked down. For every 10 of those you go on, you might get one. You might hit it your first time. Who knows? It might turn out that you don't want to work there, because guess what? You're interviewing them too. When you're talking to the leadership that's screening you, or you're talking to the first level of managers especially in large enterprise organizations, do you really want to work with this person? Are they going to be a good teammate? Those kind of things. So my recommendation would be screen often as possible. Interview as often as possible, and you'll get a bunch of feedback on that. But target a company that might be more receptive in terms of the experience that you have. Right. Large companies will tell you that, but we still have a huge supply demand issue here. So, right?
We're going to get to that conversation.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of my perspective on that.
I was just listening to a talk on Cyber Crimes magazine, where the gentleman said that we've got, is it 50 football stadiums full vacancies still in this country? Yeah. Yeah, so we don't even have that many professional football teams. We could go almost around twice, right? So with that being said, we have that many vacancies and that many, is it, and you know where I focus my attention, John, on some for those folks that don't have the total access into this particular industry. Does it make sense to begin to focus our attention? What is my question here? My question is, does it make sense for us to begin to focus our attention on finding those folks in sort of the untapped reservoir of talent, underserved reservoir of talent in those areas? It represents a risk for the folks that you work for, because you work for some some big corporations as
Yeah.
well. So is it a good use of our time to focus our attention there on quote unquote the folks that are non-traditional to this industry? And that
100%.
typically means non-white people. You know, so you and I have had this conversation, so I'm not shocking you, but I may shock others, but non-white people, and does it make sense to focus our attention there?
Yeah, 100%. And I would put white people in that. I mean, you know, there's people that just don't know what they don't know. And they you know, here's what I would submit is the line one security operations roles for people that are just trying to break into the field. It is a good place to break in because of the things that I talked about. And I would submit that, like, in the underserved population, you know, traditionally, well, they've already been fighting their entire lives, however long that is, and they've been grinding it out. You know, whether it's a long period or a short period of time. So they already know how to fight. They've already got that attitude. They bring something that you're never going to get in a textbook and you're never going to get in a classroom. Right. Like you've had to learn how to do this. You've had to learn how to, you know, you've adapted, you know, and you've evolved because, well, you had to survive. You had to figure it out. And so that makes you a fighter. And SecOps is a lot about that. And there's just such a wealth of a reservoir of you know, candidates out there. Cyversity is a good example of an organization that's developing those candidates. And I would say 100%. We've done a lot of that here at GuardSight in terms of just bringing in people that, you know, regardless of their immutable characteristics, that they've had some background that had nothing to do with, you know, growing up in a gated community suburb or whatever. I don't ever look at that kind of stuff. I'd say, like, tell me about your background in terms of, you know, your capability to withstand pressure and fight, because that's what happens in SecOps. So the answer is, yeah, 100%. And there's reasons that we don't do that at the larger corporations. And you talked about it. You know, a lot of it has to do with, you know, budgets get handed down to mid-level managers and their careers are dependent upon, you know, the people that they hire. But they lack leadership skills and training and courage to know that when they bring those people in, they most likely will be extremely loyal to them for giving them the opportunity. They could teach them the skill sets that they need. What they can't teach them is that, you know, intestinal fortitude that they bring with them. You either have it or you don't. And, you know, you've developed it over time. So yeah, the answer is 100%. Matter of fact, the director of professional development here, you know, has a good slogan that says, "We hire potential."
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And that is true.
I love that.
It's true. Some of the inbounds probably, you know, early on in our company were, you know, might have been considered, you know, suspect, like, and now they're superstars, and they're loyal. And, you know, I think there's a lot of good stuff that happens there if you take those shots.
Yeah. Bennett, I think that's only you. Is anyone else having a problem hearing John?
I'm not having a problem.
Yeah. I think Adam said he's good. I'm good. Nobody else has chimed in. Bennett, it might be you. So try to fix that. You're a genius. You're a genius. You could fix that. So listen, John, like we had mentioned, and, you know, I really appreciate you focusing on the fact that, you know, bringing up the fact that even there are people of all perspective, their immutable characteristics. And some of the work that I've been doing in West Virginia has really proven that everyone is at risk, and there are challenges everywhere in our country. And so I thank you for bringing that up. Like I said, John is very straight and to the point, and he's a matter of fact type guy. Is where I love him like that. When you work with your companies, and, you know, I know a couple of your folks that you work for, how do you bridge that knowledge and that concern and that focus from your team to your clients? Because, you know, of course, everyone makes mistakes and human beings make mistakes, but how do you help them understand that this is like a half of a one-shot deal? We got to make this right, and we got to be right now and today. And you know, focusing on helping them, especially through some of the challenges that your customers have. How do you help your team understand that?
Yeah, I'll give a perspective of that. So last year, we, across all of our customers, we handled, roughly 5 trillion events. And of those 5 trillion events, that turned into 130,000 some odd, maybe 136, somewhere in there, 136,000 cases that our teams process. So I'm giving you a perspective of,
Sure.
the volume and you're talking about, essentially, it only takes one bullet, metaphorically speaking. And so of those, maybe a half a dozen, single digits are actually, represented a critical asset compromise. But every one of those 136 had to be investigated. So you went from, and we have lots of machine, intelligence and automation and AI and ML and the rest of that that's in there helping us do that. Robots helping robots, robots helping humans. But if you think about that gap, or just the percentage between that 5 trillion and those actual half a dozen critical asset compromises, that's amazing. And so that's something that you have to convey to the customers. By the way, those half a dozen or single digit critical assets compromises were serious. I mean, the fact that we were there to help them reduce the dwell time was important. But this is the problem. So the way that we do that is to kind of disseminate our belief system, and our belief system in terms of our core values, and our helping the customers understand the mission. It depends on the type of customer that hires us. As you know, David, we have both large enterprise corporations and SMB, SME type corporations. The large enterprise corporations, they've already defined their mission, so they're relaying that to us. Although our mission is consistently the same. For the SMBs or the SMEs, it's important for us to help them understand that mission and what our mission is and the rules and beliefs that are involved with that mission, including a warrior mentality that has to happen on both sides. So speed is the name of the game in terms of being able to respond to threat actors who have just somehow managed to penetrate, your protection systems, and compromise your assets or somewhat. You have to. It's about dwell time. The more time they have, the more damage they're going to cause. So you have to get that in there. I also could, just explaining to them like a choreography of process and how we're going to work together as a unit. So there's this day-to-day, cyber hygiene that you perform in a SecOps unit. And then there's that, boom. So now we're right of boom. The question is, how are we operating together? So things like tabletop exercises or just developing solid relationships with the teams on the other side so that you are all moving quickly and that we're, moving towards the threat to contain it. That's kind of how we do that. It's essentially getting our belief system disseminated into these organizations so that they're not just checking a box.
Gotcha. When your team, when you're a client, and by the way, I know there are folks in the audience that have questions, or some folks that are even considering cybersecurity. So, and so when you get a chance, come off mute, ask your question, and so that you can get something directly from somebody that lives this and actually lives this environment day in and day out. John, when your clients, and let's start with the enterprise groups, when they have a challenge and an emergency, I know there's already this cohesiveness. My assumption is that there's already this cohesiveness involved there. How do you meld your team into and with their team so that there's no, there's no friction in the environment, but going right after the challenge? And no matter what it is, like Unessi Feliciano says, fix the problem, not the blame. How do you guys get through all of that crap and just get to the heart of the problem, fix it, and come out the other side whole and having that enterprise back up and running?
Yeah, this is a leadership question, David, and leadership has to own it. I have never, in my teammates that now run these programs for me, will never blame anybody, especially during a fight. That is the absolute wrong time to do that. The first objective during a cyber fight is, contain the threat. Like the enemy is out there. This is something like when I was running the Soccer Bank of America, we would communicate to our teams regularly, and we still communicate that to our teams. Like the enemy's out there, not here, right? So we may have differences, even before that, which is important. I'll talk about that in a second, just that cohesion. But the first thing is leadership has to own this. So it's not the cyber war fighters themselves. even though leadership is sometimes integrated into those cyber war fighters, depending on the size of your organization. And I don't look at those things as blames, never. I never look at them as blaming things or blaming people. I'm not talking about performance defects, that we have across the board, whether it's a personal performance defect, whether it's a technical performance defect. Those have to be remedied. Like you can't function as a unit when you don't remedy those. The simplest analogy in that, we'll go back to that football analogy. Like if you keep throwing interceptions, like we're not going to win. So what we have to do is we have to correct that. And what I do is I call those, opportunities for improvement. You'll see that littered throughout our incident response, throughout our monthly challenge, throughout our internal performance reviews with teams. But it's about leadership, and it's about, disciplined leadership. It's about leadership understanding their objective and how to, what their mission objectives are, how to measure those through key performance indicators, and then the actual operations of the tactical mobilization of the teams. And if you're doing that, then there's going to be good symbiosis between all the players on the team. And guess what? Things happen. I mean, sure. we don't want, homicides to happen, but they happen. And we try to prevent them. We try to prevent armed robberies from happening, but they happen. And so the answer is, how do we respond as a unit when that happens? And what were we doing left of that to make sure that we're doing that correctly? And so there's never any blame for me, even internally for our operations. I mean, my directors are always, hitting on their OKRs. So it's easier for me, to talk about that. But we've had, plenty of issues where people have had, I'll call them performance defects, and we just basically course correct and get them moving on. I don't care about this. I'm not, in Utah, of course, we can drive 80 miles an hour on our freeways. It's great. And there's no traffic, which is even better. But when I'm driving there, I'm not looking like this. I'm looking through the windshield, man. Sure. Where are we going? If you've got a repeated defect, that's something different. We'll document that. We'll make sure that we help you correct that. But it's about looking forward and about the opportunity for improvement. It's the same thing in a fight.
Sounds engaging and enterprising. Let me ask this question. What are your customers saying to you is their biggest challenge that they're asking you to help them solve?
It depends on the the size of the customer. Yeah. So for the enterprise customer, there's a lot of just a day-to-day hygiene. And what a lot of the enterprise customers and enterprise organizations have realized works best for their leadership are hybrid solutions. Yep. So where you've got outsourced providers working alongside, they're either embedded or they're wholly outsourced. Like in a lot of cases, we are an augmented SOC team essentially in those enterprise organizations. That they've discovered that works really well. And so they bring us in there. Because if you think about it, an enterprise organization, or even a smaller level enterprise, somebody, company that's doing 500 million or so, they probably only have 2 or 3 people that are on that security team because that's all the budget they have for it. The issue with that, of course, is that, people sleep and, they have children and they go on vacation and, and so while they're doing all that, the bad guys are still showing up. And so, when you have that hybrid unit, that kind of offsets that. And you also get into better succession management. So you don't have liabilities on single individuals. For the smaller customers, it's really, full on protection suites where we're bringing in some cyber weaponry with us. We are their, 100% their guardian and their protector of their assets. They rely on us, wholeheartedly to tell them what direction to move in. They don't have, chief information security officers. They may not even have a chief information officer or anything like that. It's just they've got, somebody relative who, happens to be running the IT department for the last 20 years. All these things. In those particular cases, their biggest challenge is just, what do we do? How do we protect? What do we have? For the bigger guys, it's more, here is your specific mission objective. It's to augment our teams and help manage detection and response.
Good. So I know that there are a couple of questions coming in from the group. I think, Ramel, you had a question in the chat. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question? Oh, I'm going to read it for you. How's that?
Okay.
I'm going to read it for you. Where is Ramel's question there? All right, I can't find it, Ramel. Now you have to come off and ask the question. In the meantime, while you decide to do that or not, Ramel, I'm going to ask Kelvin Harris, who had his hand up a few minutes ago. He wants to come off and ask a question. Oh no, actually, it wasn't Ramel. It was Jay Brown. So Jay, you're here now. Would you like to come off mute and ask your question?
Sure. I just wanted to know, does GuardSight hire direct, or do they like outsource to a third party to bring on new candidates?
We hire direct.
Okay. But I think I seen something on a website. It was like a posting from like 2008 on the careers.
That would have been us, because we didn't start till 2009. Let me give you our URL in the chat here, so you make sure you get the right company. And I think it's probably /careers. .com careers. I think it's probably that guy. So there's another company that has the name GuardSight. They spell their name a little bit different, so that might have been it. We are the SIGHT version, like the Vision version.
I'm actually still seeing the exact same thing. I don't know.
Well,
when I click careers,
here's one way to solve that, right?
it took me to that. I don't know if that was right or not.
Here's one way to solve that. John's got a LinkedIn out there. He's put something in the chat. He's got a LinkedIn out there. Connect with him directly. And Jay, you and he will figure out how to make magic happen if there's an opportunity to get hired. Is that fair?
That'll work.
Yeah. Cut right through the nonsense, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, it makes perfect sense. I know if you're looking for something, this is a good place to find it. And John's a good person to help you sort of ascertain some direction. Hey, Kelvin, do you want to come off mute and ask a question?
Yes. David and John, thank you for the real conversation today. John, I'm Kelvin Harris, and I'm a workforce development professional for the city of Richmond, and been working with David for a couple of years. And you talked on this a little bit, but could you expound? I'm trying to help pretty much inexperienced people starting from the ground floor, try to break in the field of cybersecurity. What suggestions or advice for me trying to go out and help them secure internships and getting first line experience? How should I be approaching these businesses, particularly tech businesses, which probably, even though they have a need like tons of different organizations now because of shortages everywhere in terms of talent, but is there some specific things that I should be doing as the person trying to assist these people moving forward and to break into this career?
Yeah. So thanks for the question, Kelvin. Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to you from my perspective. Again, I think you have to kind of look at like the where they enter. So if you've got no experience whatsoever, other than maybe, you can put down that you're a good video game player, but you haven't, invested in, any of your education in terms of, I'm going to try to go get a certificate related to cyber or something like that. The chances of you even getting, recognized by a large organization are slim to none. Now, the larger organizations may tell you that, on their cover that they do that, but they rarely do that. And that's just reality. So that going there is probably not the best place to start. I mean, the probability of you scoring there is low, is my point. Going to service providers like GuardSight and all of our competitors, there's 3,000 of them. That might be a better place to start because they may be more willing to take that risk and get them trained. If you were going to help them The things that I would emphasize is, one, we got to get you into some program, cybersecurity program, so at least you learn about cyber, whether that's an A+ or a Security Plus or, some kind of training like that, so that you've got some fundamentals of cyber. Not a CISSP or something like that would take you forever to get anyway, because you have nothing. But what you'll show the employer or the prospective employer is that you're committed to your craft, and that this is interesting to you. By the way, you may try to go get one of those certificates and find out that this is absolutely not what you're interested in doing. That's also possible. So that would be the first start. The other thing I would say is just instilling some things like, hard work, discipline, commitment, determination, sacrifice. Like, I'm going to go into the business and I'm going to make, $4 billion in my second year. That's not reality. The reality of it is you're going to have to start low and you're going to have to, bust your butt, and it takes time to do that. That's just the way it works. When you're a guy that's been in the business for more than 30 plus years, I can tell you that. And all the people that are more experienced on the team will also tell you that. So the expectation that you have has to be like no expectation. Like, you are grateful for the opportunity now that you've got, and that you're going to kick some ass once you get in there. If you teach them that and get them into that mindset, I think they have a much better opportunity of succeeding. And then targeting the opportunities that are right in terms of the smaller opportunities are probably a better place to go. The reason I say that is because all the other guys that have got all that experience, well, they're targeting the large companies. So you're essentially going in, walking in as, maybe an American Legion baseball player thinking that you're going to play for the New York Yankees. And it's just not going to happen. And I can't believe I said the New York Yankees as a Boston Red Sox fan, but I did. And so those kind of things aren't going to jive. So trying to find that good symbiosis of the best opportunity where you could score, and then find 20 of those and apply to all of them. And you're going to get the feedback in there. But teaching them things like the discipline and the commitment, also corporate verbal communication, corporate written communication, really strong. Because if you think about it, in the beginning, you never actually get the opportunity to see the other person. You never get to see their facial expressions. You never get to see their demeanor, their enthusiasm, their lack of enthusiasm. What you get to see initially is how they write. And so if you're sending in like stuff that's poorly written or stuff like that, and these people care about that, then you've already excluded yourself from that. And you didn't even know that you did it. How could you? You didn't know what you didn't know. And so you're going to interpret that as something else. So those are probably things I recommend that you could help them with.
Right.
Thank you so much. And appreciate also you all touching on the leadership aspect of it. And we are working with folks, trying to give them some foundation with IT fundamentals and working along with Cyversity. So I really appreciate the answer. It's been
yes, sir. And then Kelvin, reach out to me on LinkedIn too. Let's have a conversation. But that we've got to connect with Mr. Elcock on this too. But I'm always happy to help there. And if we've got opportunity, I'll send them your way. David knows I do that when possible. When there's opportunity, especially at the big guys, and they're willing to take that risk. And I could corner them on it, like, hey, you were saying you were going to do this. I've got the opportunity now for you to do it. And they're like, okay,
Yeah, thank you. With the preparation and preparativeness, just be ready for the opportunity. It's there and it'll come. Ryan, did you want to say something? I know you had came off, or you had raised your hand for a second, but did you want to say something?
I'm all set, David. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much. Hey, I wanted to ask Serenity and then Bennett to ask their question. Serenity, you first.
Sure. Well, thank you, John. This is really refreshing to hear your really honest and direct advice. So I'm really, really appreciating that. And I'm wondering what motivated you to form your own company, and how did you decide it was the right time to do so despite all the obstacles that you knew that you'd have to come across?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I don't get to talk a lot about this a lot, so I appreciate that. So the reason that I formed the company is when I was running managing the security operations center at Bank of America, I had, large fortresses of protection, top level professionals, the best cyber weapons money could buy, great leadership, commitment from leadership to cyber, everything you could possibly want, from somebody who's running a SecOps unit. But what I saw is that eventually, we represented a hard target for the enemy. And they still do. A lot of enterprise organizations do. They represent a hard target for the enemy. So the enemy is essentially going to start moving into softer targets. And those softer targets are going to be, SMB, SMEs. And so my vision was that I would go, target these SMB SMEs. And of course, I did that at 2009, which for many of us on the call, remember that as being the housing crisis. We're in the middle of a recession. My wife is, you're starting a business when you've got this great cushy job, and I wouldn't use the word cushy, but it was it paid well, and it provided upward mobility. And I left that to pursue this as an entrepreneur. And it was hard, and it still is hard for any of you business owners out there, but after about 7 years in, the company started to really, be what I wanted it to be. And so it started to pay off, and I've been able to provide opportunities for, lots of people that never would have had those opportunities, which is the most rewarding thing for me. And in addition to protecting customers and providing them that, but it was hard. So the catalyst was a vision of what cyber would be. I was probably 5 years ahead of the curve on that, but went out and did it. And then long term, it was, just keep grinding it out and stay committed to what you're going to do. And, it'll be tough, but so what? Anything that's good is tough.
Anything that's worth having is tough. And definitely is grinding it out, just staying focused, because more often times than not, you are ahead of the crew. You are ahead of the curve on ideas that come into your brain. Right? So Serenity, was that good for you?
Yeah, I can ask another question after Bennett. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Bennett's question because he's in the middle of something. This question was to you, John. What is the state of cyber careers? What is the most valuable piece of advice you would give to a younger professional?
Yeah, most valuable piece of advice is, depending on where they're at, if they've already gone out and they've started to educate themselves in cyber. So the really important thing there is, like, even if you go to that careers page on our website and you apply, what you'll see is we'll ask you a series of questions. And sometimes we'll get for the new people, I don't know. And if you think about that, there's no sand, there's no dial in there that's like a sand clock, whatever they call those things. There's no timer on this application. And it turns out like there are a couple pretty good search engines out there, DuckDuckGo, Google, for example, where you can actually go find these answers. And so what we like are the people that say, I did not know this answer, but I went and researched it, and here's what I found, and it's fascinating, or something like that. And then they'll explain that. Those are always good. So my piece of advice there is like, be resourceful, be curious. You're not going to know everything. None of us on this call know everything. We don't. When I was in my 20s, I knew everything. But now that I'm in my 50s, of course, I know nothing.
My God, how true is
that? Right? And so the answer is be resourceful and, have fun. Like, it's going to be a challenge. And if you turn that challenge into an opportunity for upward mobility and an opportunity to, achieve your objectives and your goals, and you realize that it's not going to happen at the snap of the fingers, but here's, you can actually get in there. Most likely, you'll get feedback from the other side. Now, that feedback may not be what you expected in terms of, hey, congratulations, you're exactly the person we've been looking for the last 30 years. Welcome to our team. But what you will get is feedback. And every time you get that feedback, you can then improve. It's nothing like anything else that you've ever done in your life, whether you've taken music lessons or whether you've been a professional or whether you've, taken exams or whatever it is. When you start, you don't know anything about it. And so you have to keep improving and challenging. And the barrier to entry would be there. So my biggest piece of advice is get curious. Aggressive curiosity is what one of my directors here calls it. Get aggressive and get curious about what you want to do and immerse yourself in that.
Sure.
Any of our professional athletes, as you know, David, they're not there because they didn't immerse themselves in their trade craft. The reason they're there is because they immerse themselves. They have God-given talent for sure, but they immerse themselves just that little bit more than the next guy did or the next gal did. So that would be my recommendation there.
Let me take that just a step further and say, okay, that's entry level that you just responded to. What about someone that's 3 to 4 years in?
Yeah, that's good, man. 3 to 4 years in is really today in cyber is, that's a good place to be. And the reason I say that is because you haven't reached that, guy or gal that's been in there for 15 to 20 years. It's probably, making some pretty good coin at that perspective. So they're starting to they're starting on the other way now because now they've got this challenge where, it's a remuneration challenge for them. And I'm not saying that people sending me emails, does that mean you don't hire people that are making a lot of money? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just telling you this is the reality of it. When you're in that 4-year, 3, 5, 7-year range, that's a really good place to be, because you're still on the uprise from a remuneration perspective. You've got experience. Like all employers, that's what they want. They want you to know like the different experiences that you've had early on in your professional career. So what I would say is, if you're in the 3 to 4, you're in a you're in a seller's market at this point, and you're in a good space. And I would say that you can, even those same companies that I talked about, like companies like ours and SMEs. There is a lot of manufacturers out there that are looking for cybersecurity. There's a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, maybe only have 1 or 2 cyber people on it. Those are really good places. If you can get yourself onto an enterprise team, one of the big, corporations, David, you and I are very familiar with, so we share the same customers in that space. That's a really good deal, because now you've got that on your CV. You may be there for a long time, you may not, but so what I would say is the people that are in that 3 to 7-year range right now, they're in good shape.
Right. So we're closing in on some time here, John. I had some social impact questions. We're going to do some personal and some industry questions. We stay away from the technical. We'll get to that the next time we get a chance to talk, because there are folks on our teams that want to hear some more technical things. But I didn't stray in that direction. We've got a supply demand challenge, right? It's a huge challenge. If you had your druthers, how would you solve it from GuardSight's perspective?
Yeah, so the way that I'll segment this up a little bit, I think. So from a GuardSight perspective, and somebody who pays attention to our P&L, the way that I solve that is with an avalanche of opportunity. Like the more opportunity we have, the more revenue we make, and theoretically, if we're doing it right, the better our profit is and our profit margins, which is true. We scale. And so I would hire everyone I could and give the people the shots that need them. Like I love putting, less experienced people in groups of experienced people, and then getting them out to go fight, and then they come home, because those less experienced people now, get that. And that's a really good way for us to continue to scale, grow our teams. So that's how I would do it. There is definitely a supply and demand issue. I talked about some of the challenges that we have with the, with the high-end corporations. I would say there's a lack of courage at the middle management level. I think leadership is out, on their megaphones talking about how they're going to change the world. But the reality is, are you really changing the world? Or you still have, open recs where you're saying you need, somebody with 7 years of experience in, crypto, which has only been around for, 12, 13 years. So that kind of stuff, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I would say that there's another issue there. There's a couple other issues there, and how they could solve it. So we have a bunch of opportunity, I would say, for the private equity has created, because they've flooded the market with weapons, everything from EDR to SIMs to threat hunting to, all the weaponry that we know in cyber. And that's their solution, because people don't scale well. And what I would object to that and say, what you really need is more operators. And that's what they're talking about when we have a supply and demand issue. We need more operators. We need more capable operators. Then we need more weapons right now. We've got plenty of weaponry in the environment, in the ecosystem. The reality of it is we need more operators. Now, we're going to use those weapons to scale. We have to, and we can't take a look at the massive amount of data without them. It's a hybrid solution for sure. But the real deal, the real way to solve this problem, and the other way, is through industry itself. And then the final one is on the supply side itself. So industry, of course, has to require courage at mid-level. And this has to start at the top. There are going to be people that you put on your team, regardless of how they entered your system, that are going to fail. You're going to help them. It's your job to own that. It's your job to help them improve. You're going to provide them the paths of opportunity that they can to improve. But some people fail. That's just the way it works. That's the way life works. So you have to be prepared for that. And you have to terminate that, 1,700, bus mentality. You hear me talk about David. It's like, oh, here's a 1,700 bus. If you're really interested in hiring that population or hiring this group of, people, what you need to do, less experienced people, is you need to invest in that. You have to become passionate about it. You have to want it. And I would say that we talk about it a lot at the larger organizations, but I'm not sure we actually want it. And those are two different things. The final thing on that is supply. And you're going to have to suck it up on the supply side, being like, if you're not in yet, the way that you're going to get in is through hard work, discipline, and commitment. And you're probably not going to make a lot of money in the beginning. Even though there's there's a huge supply and demand problem. The challenge you'll have is like, you are going to pay somebody that hasn't even started, somebody who's been in for 7 years. That doesn't equate. So on the P&L, when we're looking at these things, even at the highest level, they're thinking about this stuff, right? So the reality of it is you got to sacrifice if you want to start to break in. But what I would say, if you did that, the long-term investment, the return on that investment is huge. Sure.
We've had a lot of conversations. Probably my last business question. I'm just going to start peppering you with BS questions next. So, but anyone else in the audience, don't forget, just, if you want to ask a question, please just raise your hand or come off mute and ask a question. But John, we know that especially our conversations always focused around making sure that we train people correctly so that they can work for organizations like you and some of the clients that you work for. So that one characteristic, that one gleaming talent that they have, when they come, what is it? What the hell is it? I mean, I know you've spoken about a couple of things. Just pick one thing and needle in and hammer down on what that is that they should have when they come to you, or when they come to any one of the yous out there in the world.
Selfless persistence. Just being persistent, and the rest of it usually behind that, not being narcissistic, you being persistent in your endeavor. Nobody is controlling your destiny but you. And persistent people know this. True. And they know this. They take all the noise and they put it aside. They focus on what their mission objective is and they go get it. And with the expectation that there is no expectation about what I might encounter on the way. And if I do encounter obstacles, or when I do encounter obstacles, I will deal with them appropriately. I'm not going to manufacture them, because that just means I don't want it. And that means I'm not persistent. So I would say selfless persistence. And you could throw, honesty in there too, and discipline. Like if you're that type of a person, I don't care what you do, you'll succeed. You probably can't become a heart surgeon overnight, but you could break into our industry for sure.
No doubt. What's the roadmap look like for John and GuardSight?
Yeah, so we're continuing to grow, continuing to scale. We've been fortunate that we've put ourselves in a position where many of our competition has taken external capital for their growth, and we have not. So we've grown organically. That may change. We put ourselves in position that we could go both ways. We've recently just added all of our employees to our capitalization table. Which will give them, the idea of employee ownership to me is really important. Being able for people to realize, material and spiritual wealth, and those are our visions. From just a service vision is to continue to expand. Right now we have an OAR model, operations assessment response. The future holds what we'll call the board model, which is blockchain operations assessments response and drone security, that kind of stuff. Just basically looking downrange about the things that we'd like to be involved with, that we've already started to be involved with, and to continue to grow our employee base and grow our customer base, service our customers. Our customers are really good at providing feedback, and we take that feedback and implement it. So that's what I'm looking at downrange.
There you go. Look, we're just about at time. I just wanted to ask anyone else in the audience if they had any questions. I see some big guys out there that may want to ask a question, but if not, that's fine. But thank you for coming. I'm going to just share this on the screen for a minute here so that I can share what we should be looking at. If you're here and you have a comment that you'd like to make, I'll put this in the chat, but also here's our survey form that you should go to and just place a statement there so that you can let people know what you think about our conversations. Here's what's coming up next month. CISO for Equifax Canada, Octavia Howell is going to be here in April. In May, Lisa Beth Latini some of these names may be familiar to you. And in June is going to be Ryan Higgins. He's the Deputy CIO and CISO for Department of Commerce. And Kiana Hicks, oh, I got that twice, so that's a mistake. And in September, Lieutenant Latino Heritage Month Chairman of High Tech, Guillermo Diaz, who's a real good friend of ours. So I'm looking forward to hearing from some of, seeing you guys on upcoming sessions and upcoming conversations. If there's no more questions from the group, I'd like, to John, just to, well, let me stop for a minute. Sometimes Devin says, Dave, just wait, see if they have a question, for crying out loud. So that being said, Serenity, did you want to go further with your question, or are you okay now?
Well, I think that probably I can infer. I was wondering if you do cloud security, John, in your company, and you have
We
if you have
do.
cloud security roles. Okay, I thought so since you mentioned blockchain and drone security,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
pretty neat, hardware
Yeah.
security. So you're like on the cutting edge.
Everybody's in the cloud. As a matter of fact, GuardSight is, we've never, maybe really early on, we had some colo stuff, but it's all, we've been a cloud company from day one. We're in the cloud. All of our partners are cloud. Every one of our customers has some cloud footprint, some more than others. That's going to continue to grow. You know that. And there's really good opportunity. Hey, that's actually a good point. I would say that even back to Kelvin's question too, if focusing, getting the neophytes into cloud security is actually a pretty good idea, because you think about how old cloud security is. It's still relatively, it's mature, but it's still relatively immature compared to the computing space entirely. Like probably in the last half a dozen years, there's been an adoption, and that's going to continue. So that means like you're not that far behind. So just because you're a security guy and you dealt with on-premise stuff doesn't mean you're an expert cloud person. So that might be a good approach, is to get them focused on a specific niche target. Blockchain is another one. You mentioned that, Serenity. Of course, we're interested in that. Drone security is another one. We're starting to deliver packages now to homes. What happens when those drones don't make it where they're supposed to go? How do we secure those? Did they get knocked out of the sky? Were they redirected? If you look down there's not a lot in there. It's niche would be the deal there. So even Kelvin, back to your question, try to find some niches in there. We just mentioned three of them: cloud, blockchain, and crypto's in that blockchain deal, and then of course drone security.
Of course.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do you even have roles that do that right now, or is that more like a planning?
Yeah. So, well, regarding the blockchain and the drones, we don't have roles, but what we've done is, so interestingly enough, we acquire talent that often has multiple skill sets. So, for example, we've put some LEO, former military and LEO members on our team who had little to no cyber experience, but had lots of drone experience. And so, although we're not in that drone space right now, from a marketing sales perspective, what we did was we said, well, these folks, first of all, they come with the fight mentality we have. They've been protecting people, assets their entire careers. We'll put them on the team and have them work in our VSOC and learn the fundamentals of cybersecurity for a year or two while we're, developing our go-to-market strategy for drones and blockchain. And then we'll have people that are already experienced in that space. So that's been our approach.
There you go.
That's great. Thank you so much, John.
Yes, ma'am.
Learned so much. Really
Yes, ma'am.
inspiring to hear you talk about all these
Thank you, ma'am.
topics.
John, it's been great. I don't know what else to say to you, but it's been great. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to the folks that did attend today. Typically have a larger crowd, maybe something happening with the registration. But I'm appreciative of your time, and I'm appreciative of our developing relationship and friendship.
Yes, sir. Mutual.
Else, John, I'm going to go ahead and begin to close out the room, but everyone could see the survey. Everyone could see the survey. The survey link there. Just capture that link, and I put it in the chat. Capture that link, and then give some feedback to Cyversity on some of these conversations that we're having here at Cyversity Impact. So again, John, appreciate it very much. I've cued the closeout music and away we go. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody coming.
Well, buddy.
Thank you very much.
All right.